Welcome to week 3 of AMPtalks, a virtual panel series where we will discuss all things art, music, and nonprofit with today's leading experts and practitioners. My name is Aisha Moody, and I am the co-founder and chief program officer of the Atlanta Music Project. The Atlanta Music Project was founded in 2010 with the mission to empower underserved youth to realize their possibilities through music. AMP serves roughly 350 youth annually through its after-school programs, youth orchestra and youth choir, a private lessons program, and the AMP Summer Series, an annual music festival and school. Now today's panel, AMP Talks, is part of AMP Online, which is AMP's virtual learning series, made possible with the support of the Chestnut Family Foundation, and we want to thank them for their generous support. AMP Online also includes music master classes with AMP faculty, recitals by AMP faculty and guest artists, and in-depth podcasts with artistic luminaries from around the world. You can find a schedule of programming for AMP Online at our website at atlantamusicproject.org. Now, today's panel, entitled So You Think You Want to Be a Singer, is geared towards aspiring singers, both young and old. You will hear from an incredible panel of experts as they discuss what they've learned from devoting their life to a singing career. Throughout the webinar, we will be taking questions from you, the attendees. So feel free to drop a line in the chat, questions or comments. And now we will do our best to get to them. At this point, let's meet our panelists. A fun group we have here. We're going to start with Edward Parks, if you give a little wave. Grammy award-winning baritone Edward Parks has been hailed by Opera News for his warm, velvety baritone and the New York Times for his robust, earthy voice. He was named by Classical Singers magazines as the quintessential leading operatic artist for the 21st century. He's wowed opera audiences throughout the world, to include the Metropolitan Opera and the Atlanta Opera, and his title role in the world premiere of Steve Jobs with the Santa Fe Opera, which was awarded Best Opera Recording at the 61st Grammy Awards. Ed was awarded third prize in Placido Domingo's 2015 Operalia competition and was presented in the organization's The Voices of 2015 concert in Hungary. Next up, Mr. Quillan Martin. Singer, songwriter, and pianist, Quillan is the definition of a blossoming musician whose dedication to his craft is sure to pay off very soon. His rare capacity for creating meaningful music, along with his flair for modernizing mixing soul, pop, and gospel influences, allows him to shine bright in the scene of dronish, ready-made starlets that comprise today's industry. Quillan's own mantra concerning music, which is "just do you," reveals his refusal to be anything less than original as he pursues his musical mission to uplift, encourage, and inspire his generation. Quillan's song catalog boasts over 150 plus songs, having worked with many notable artists, including Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child, Ruben Studdard, Peeble Bryson, and Aretha Franklin. Quillan is proud to have worked as a conductor and vocal coach with the Atlanta Music Project since 2013. And now, Marcus Beam. Marcus is currently a vice president and artist manager in the vocal division at IMG Artists. He works with a diverse roster of artists, encompassing both up-and-coming singers and well-established names in opera, who regularly perform on the world's leading stages. This season sees his clients on the rosters of the Metropolitan Opera, Lyric Opera of Chicago, San Francisco Opera, Washington National Opera, Los Angeles Opera, Dallas Opera, and more. In addition to his work as an artist manager, Marcus also maintains an active coaching and consulting practice, working with performing artists to define and clarify personal goals, develop career plans, and develop their unique artistry and voice. Prior to his work in artist management, Marcus enjoyed an extensive career in opera houses and concert halls in both Europe and the United States. He has appeared multiple times at Carnegie Hall and New York's Lincoln Center. Equally at home in song and musical theater, he has performed numerous concerts and recitals spanning all musical genres. I would like to welcome the three of you at the moment. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And Unfortunately, Frenchie Davis is not feeling well today, so she was not able to join us. So we have an all-male panel. So ladies, in the comment section, please send in your thoughts so I will not be feeling lonely over here. Thank you very much. And we hope to have another special guest join us in just a few minutes. He'll be joining us in a few, and I'll introduce that person when they get on. But let's get right to it, okay? Our goal for today is to have a very honest, authentic conversation about what it means when you dedicate your life to music as a vocalist. As I look at you, I see a group of intelligent, hardworking individuals that could have found success in whatever they chose to do. But you chose music. And of course, that's not to down music because we are all musicians and we know the power of music. But I would like to talk about your why. Why music? Now, anyone can answer this, but I'm going to pitch this one towards Ed first because I think your story will resonate with our viewers. Growing up in Indiana, Pennsylvania, you were Ed, the football star, before you were Ed, the singer. And as the story goes, you decided to let football take a bit of a backseat in order to pursue singing. And your football coach one day asked you, okay, would you like to win the Super Bowl one day, or would you rather sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl one day? And you answered, sing the anthem. Let's talk about that. What did you know then that you still know now as an artist, and what made you make that decision?
I feel like it. First of all, I knew what he wanted me to say, and I just wasn't gonna say that because football was never really my passion at all. I mean, I think back home I was known as Ed, the singer and football player, and I did all the plays and all the musicals, and so I was really active in on stage there. But yeah, football was never my passion. I mean, I like being in team sports and being a team player, but being in music was always what I just knew I was going to be doing. Even when I was super young, I knew that I was going to try.
And I think that rings true for a lot of people in, watching, that'll be watching this. You sort of have a moment very early in life when you say, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do. Mr. Martin, you talk a lot about the why, and I think we're going to do a whole entire session on that. But I'll call you Kian. Sorry. Mr. Martin is what we say at work, Mr. Martin. Kian, tell us a little bit about your why. And Marcus, if you want to chime in, you're more than welcome to as well.
Definitely. Well, my why, I think for me, it definitely began before I really even knew definitively what that was. And it just came from growing up in church, surrounded by singers and music. It was always a call, an inexplainable passion. As a kid, you're just enjoying what you see your family doing, and that becomes what you do. And I think for me, I began to find, certainly around middle to early high school, that nothing else was fulfilling. I felt like this was my one way to connect with people as a young performer. You're always impacted by kind compliments, how people tell you the experience you created. And I just love that connectivity with people. And since childhood, I was always a very social, extroverted type of kid. And so when I found that my gift of music began to touch people and have a large impact in regards to the way I made them feel, I knew that this was a large portion as to why I'm here, on the planet, and what I'm supposed to do throughout the course of my years as a developing singer and musician. And yeah, I think simply for me, the connection of how you make people feel, that exchange and that interaction, because we as people, we always interact, and the beauty of what we do as musicians, we create experiences. And yeah, that was certainly my why for sure.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. It's interesting, the question. I'm really passionate about the question of finding your why, the process of doing that. And I think for a long time I couldn't articulate it, and that sometimes you see your why in retrospect when you're looking, connecting the dots of the pieces that led you to where you are. So mean, for me, it's bringing people joy, and I haven't found a way that does that more efficiently and more immediately than the power of music. And so I also think I usually frame the why question, like your why, as your ministry. And I don't necessarily mean that through a specific Christian lens, but what are you here to do? That's your ministry. And I think when we find that and can articulate that for ourselves, then you have the permission for that to manifest in different ways, meaning it doesn't have to be singing an opera. It doesn't have to be, the specific incarnation of what your job is, but that allowing your ministry and your why to take different forms. So it can be, volunteering for hospice. It can be a mindful conversation with a friend. It can certainly be stepping onto a stage and singing to people, but that there's I find a little more latitude in how you express your why as you clarify it, and you realize that it's not necessarily connected to the specifics of your job.
Perfect. You guys speak with so much passion, right, about music and what it's like to share your music with others. So that brings you joy and that brings you purpose. But as you find your why and as you pursue that why, how do you know if you're really doing it well? How do you affirm yourself? Is it just I have a good feeling? Like, to you, what does it mean? I'll start with anybody. What does it mean to make it? How do you know? How do you define making it, and how do you make it?
I feel like it's. I really don't like the term as much as I know what you're trying to say, but like making it is. I'm not sure you ever really make it. I don't think that's the goal. The goal isn't to. Maybe the goal is to provide. Work as a musician and provide for yourself and your family and things like that. Like that would be in terms of, I'm sustaining myself as an artist and making it that way. But for me, it's if I'm able to sing with good people and good orchestras and good directors and good conductors and composers, that's for me the epitome of what I've always wanted. I just want to be with good musicians. No matter where it is, no matter what, I want to be with people that feel the same way that I do about music and that have dedicated their entire lives to this thing and take it seriously. That's all I really ever wanted. So if I can be in those places with those people, making good music, sharing an experience, that's what I consider me.
I love the way that you stated that, because it makes me think, just expounding on that for myself, I found you have to define what success is for you, and oftentimes in our field, that is, it goes without saying, you're constantly feeling unfulfilled because you're comparing and contrasting your career achievements or opportunities to another person. And I found that before you even experience success, I feel like you have to define what are those benchmarks that I'm looking for. And in a way, it allows you to not only kind of hold yourself accountable, but a lot of times the beauty of what we do, we can have this particular aspiration and an opportunity comes in a whole different form, and it's it's equivocal to that level of success. You know what I mean? But I think ultimately you have to define, like, if I am pursuing this, what deems successful en route to this point. And I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think we ever fully make it, because I feel like if we were to make it, then the purpose is it not fulfilled, And for me, it's like I want to always be able to be active. I want to always have opportunities. And so I think I remember Bill Withers, rest his amazing soul. He said in an interview that I remember watching not too long ago, and he was like, let your joy be in the doing. Always find joy in carrying out your art and carrying out your craft. And when you do that, you'll always find success because your joy is in the doing. Um,
Well, so for the sake of our younger viewers watching, you two just answered about 5 questions in one, and I love the fact that you tapped into the monster of comparison. Is competition healthy? Is it negative? Is it divisive? We hear you all went to school for this. You have degrees. You have lots of accolades behind what you do. There are people in your same field that may not have any of those things. They may be at the top of the charts, maybe a household name. Does that matter? Is that how you? It sounds like that's not how you define success, because you define success in your own terms. But how do you navigate that? And as you work with other artists, how do you talk to your colleagues in the field, or your mentees in the field? Like, how do you deal with that constant idea of comparison, because it's there always, you know?
Yeah, to your point, I do think it would be somewhat disingenuous to pretend that you can completely set all of that aside, when we're being bombarded with that constantly on a worldly, outlook. But to go back to Kian and Ed's points, I think what's so important, and what they were saying too, is defining success for yourself, because it's an industry, and possibly many other industries are like this, but a lot of what I call well-intentioned advice givers will have very clear ideas about what you should do, what success looks like, what the hurdles are. You should be singing at this place, or you should do this program, or you should be at this level. And I see a lot of people in my work often jump all of those hurdles, get to the goal that other people kind of prescribe to them, and they're not happy because it was never their goal. It was living out somebody else's aspirations, basically. So I think that's why it's so important to define that for yourself. And then I do think there's a healthy competition,
yeah, right.
I think there's healthy competition that can spur you on. But if you don't have that base of, okay, it's like kind of looking at how the constructs of the business work and playing within that in a fun way, but with a real grounded base for what's important to you, rather than not having that base, and then you throw everything into this kind of game of the business, and when it doesn't work out, you're crushed because that's what you put everything into.
Yeah,
I love that. Yes.
You also, I look at it like there's blockers that we all have, right? Like they're blocking the artistic outlet. I think competition is, yes, healthy, and I think a lot of it, as a singer and musician, it's a competition with myself and my craft and what I've learned and how I want to use my instrument and all the things that you work at home. But the blockers are going into a competition or going into something and being worried about what other people are doing, and also, overthinking what you're doing, because all these things just stop everything that you're there to do. I'm there to open and allow you in to see what I'm feeling. And if I can't let all that go, all that noise, this is impossible. And as a person who watches people, you can read a lot of that stuff on their face and in their performance and how they're presenting themselves. So it is healthy, but I also feel like you need to be able to have a tool to let all that stuff just
Yeah.
Wow. That's good stuff.
I agree. I think that I think the competition is you have to acknowledge it, as Mr. Marcus said, like, it's there. It's inevitable. It's there. But I think that there's always different degrees of where, okay, are you allowing this competition to consume your experience, consume what you're doing? And for me, I often think about it, for instance, for every music or art-based program, I just remember being a music major, I was far removed from, classical training technique, etc. I was a church boy, gospel choir, church music. But I love the fact that I challenged myself to not only learn and embrace this experience. But I love that from the faculty to your peers, there were expectations. You know, we held one another accountable. In a way, it allowed us to still view these other students as, wow, like this student is excellent at arias, or this student's German is on point, and, you know, perhaps my Italian may have been my strong suit. But we didn't allow that comparison to soil and ruin our experience. We held each other accountable. You know, we lifted one another up and pushed one another forward. And I think that's where competition, when you look at it from that perspective, it makes it healthy, because it really will consume you if you let it. And I think recently, specifically in pop culture, I don't know if you guys tuned in, but I was having a conversation about this last night. The whole situation in popular music, where it's like producers Timbaland and Swiss Beats are having these versus battles on Instagram, and, you know, everybody's saying that Babyface and Teddy Riley recently broke the internet because it was like probably like half of the world tuning in. But even from observing that, you have these giants in music that have made tons of music and success, but I love the way that they were celebrating one another. You know what I mean? And that spoke volumes to me, because it's true that you should have standards and expectation, but when you hold one another accountable, opposed to looking at it as, you know, a rivalry, it allows you to still have joy and, you know, to celebrate one another. And that's something that I learned not only while I was studying music, but in my continual, you know, day-to-day as an artist. It's like, you have to celebrate one another, you know. It gets lonely at the top by yourself.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we got that covered, and I hope everyone took notes on that, let's talk about what this looks like in your daily life as far as taking care of yourself. That we talked about taking care of our emotional, mental health, and I think that is very important. But physically, when life is busy, how often are you using your voice, like in a day or in a week? And our instrument exists inside of our body. So how do you take care of your instrument and make sure that you can live your life speaking throughout the day or doing whatever you do throughout the day, and also being ready for your shows? Like, what are your best tips, your go-to practices? Please share some with us now.
Well, I mean,
is that okay, Ed? You're going to go first.
I know everybody is very different on this. You know, some people have superstitions before they sing and before the performance days and on the job. And I mean, I think it's for me, I use my voice in many ways throughout the day. I mean, I have a 5-year-old. We sing all kinds of things together. And I mean, I don't sing a lot of opera when I'm home. I spend a lot of time when I'm working on music, not even really singing, but I feel like a lot of times you have to number one, be secure with your instrument. I think when you're working on your craft and you're trying to nail down your technique, I think it's important to practice a lot, and I think daily. But I think when you feel secure with your instrument, you know what it's going to do, and you have an expectation of what it will do, I think it's not as important every day for me. I know every singer's different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I agree. I think it's definitely relative, but I think, for instance, myself, I sing every day, and sometimes it's not even with the intent to I'm drilling myself to do vocalises or exercises or what have you. I do it so much, I just do it. I think that I would say specifically for young singers, as you're beginning to build a career, build your instrument, I think that you have to have the same approach to anything that is indicative of greatness, whatever, again, kind of tying in, hey, if I am aiming to land this audition, and if this is a struggle area, you probably need to spend more time. And I think the nucleus of it is you have to make a conscious effort to be disciplined, And I know for myself, I'm naturally, as the saying goes, we're all our worst critic or toughest critic. For me, it's like when I really moved to Atlanta to pursue this, I was like, I'm going to practice every day for a minimum of like 4 hours. That's probably very strenuous to certain people, but I think you want to spend time nurturing your gift, building your gift, because especially when you're trying to break into this industry, there are a lot of people that they may just go the extra mile. And the unfortunate part of it is, you cannot expect everybody to have the same rituals and ideas as Mr. Edward mentioned. But I think that it really boils down to connecting that dot to, okay, what are your goals here? If if this is your goal, you probably need to spend time. Then, of course, after you accomplish certain things, then you can probably relax, or change your day-to-day. But that discipline, I think, is so key.
I just have one thing to echo that. A voice teacher when I was in grad school said something to me. He said, you're going to be really shocked with the people that are naturally gifted, who are, having all of this success right now. There will come a point where hard work will start to overtake natural talent. And I thought, what? No, that can't be, because the people who were doing so well. And he was exactly right, and it was he was right. There were a few years later where the people that were in the practice rooms every day, it started to pay off. And the people that were just kind of coasting on natural gifts ran into trouble and, couldn't find their way out of it, or just stayed at the same level, while the other people who were putting in the hours started to, excel even more. So I hope that's helpful for the younger people too, that is, if you happen to not be one of the people who's getting all of the accolades and all of the opportunities, right out of the gate, it's the hard work that will get you there.
That's a fantastic point. Thank you so much for saying that. Nothing beats a strong work ethic. And I know all of you all have seen it, in your professional careers, as you look around at your other artist friends, those who work hard, the work pays off. There's no other way around it. We have a new guest, and I'm going to bring on in a second, but I would just like to say, if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions, feel free to drop them in our Q&A section or in the chat group, and we will do our best to get to you and answer that question before we end today's panel. Now, speaking of strong work ethic, when I was a student at Howard University in the College of Fine Arts, there was someone that was always working. And we would be hanging around, some people would be doing whatever, going to parties. And this guy was like, oh, I have a gig with, Karen Clark Sheard. And because the movie is out now, I'm sure everyone knows who Karen Clark Sheard is, and the Clark sisters. So I'd like to bring on Damian Sneed, give you a brief bio on Damian. He's a multi-genre recording artist and a 2014 recipient of the prestigious Sphinx Medal of Excellence honor, which is presented annually to emerging Black and Latino leaders in classical music. Sneed has also garnered attention in a wide range of other musical genres, including jazz, gospel, pop, R&B, and musical theater. He's been featured in the New York Times multiple times for his work as a pianist, organist, conductor, composer, producer, arranger, vocal coach, professor, and arts educator. Sneed has worked with legends such as Aretha Franklin, Wynton Marsalis, Jesse Norman, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Carlos Santana, Ashford and Simpson, and more. He served as musical director for season 4 of Sunday Best, and which is BET's hit award-winning gospel singing competition. And he is the founder and artistic director of Chorale Le Chateau, which has gained a global reputation for his vivid interpretations of vocal literature. More recently, Sneed joined the acclaimed staff of the Houston Grand Opera as music director and composer in residence, and served as cover conductor for HGO Mainstage Productions under Patrick Summers. And he was also commissioned, I must add, to compose a new chamber opera called Marion's Song, which is about the life of Marian Anderson, for the Houston Grand Opera in 2020. Damian, we are so happy to have you here. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Good to see you. It's good to see you today. Now, I've got a question that I think Damian and Marcus can attack first, but anyone can give any tip on this. And I see your questions coming in the chat. Thank you guys so much. We're going to get to them. For you two, you've consulted with vocalists in various stages of their career over the years. What are some common themes that you find amongst vocalists that makes them stand out in the crowd?
One of the things for a vocalist is literally finding their voice in whatever they're singing, whatever they're emoting, being individual. A lot of times, like currently I'm working as a professor at Manhattan School of Music. Marcus understands this too at IMG. We're both connected there. There's so many singers. There's so many people that sing well. Quillan knows this. Edward Parks knows this. Many people can do the same melismas, runs, have the range, the cadenza. But what makes you individual? And that's the only thing that I think makes a vocalist stand out is, and I know the voice is what a vocalist uses as their instrument, but what are you telling? What is the story you're telling? What can you connect with people and make every single cell, everything in the atmosphere in the room be electrified where they're feeling every phrase, every word, the intent. That's what makes the difference. And sometimes singers that have less skill than others actually communicate better, and then they're the ones that actually end up being the go-to when someone needs someone to communicate. And so, I've seen singers who don't have doctorates, who don't have master's degrees, some who are just natural singers, especially in classical music. They just naturally have it, or they've studied with their parents, and so it doesn't matter the genre, gospel music, R&B, like Aretha Franklin, people, all these people, how do you communicate? That's what's the most important and most effective.
Talk about it. Yes, Marcus.
I agree 100% with Damian. I always say it's, what do you have to say? Having something to say, right? And particularly in the world that I'm in most, which is classical singing, there is a bar at which you have to be at, right? Technically, vocally. But then the thing that sets great people aside and the people that we want to hear and to experience is really bringing something to the music, offering a unique perspective, knowing what your strengths are as a performer, and walking in the room every time and playing to those strengths. But I always say to people, everybody is looking to have an experience when they're sitting on the other side of the table, whether it's an audition panel or the footlights, whether it's your audience. And that's the unifying thing about an audience. People want to have an experience. And we can all think of singers who have really beautiful voices and amazing technical facility. And that's impressive, at least for me personally, for about, I don't know, I was going to say 5 minutes, but I think that's even too long of a time. It's the wow factor. But then if there's nothing beyond that, we all want to be moved. We all want to be emotionally touched.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Okay, gentlemen, you all are musicians, but as a musician, you are a business, and you know that. How do you build your business, and what tips can you give to our viewers on that?
I'd like to say something. My mentor, Winton, always says this: your point of entry. How can people access you? Your business card is you. It's showing up on time. It's making sure everything that you have on your resume and your website is real and lines up. Because I was helping someone last night with their resume. You'd be surprised how many people, like between this group of people, we probably can touch the world. So, sometimes people fib, or they say this is their voice teacher. You may have had just a quick question with that teacher. Yes. That's not the same. And any of us can call that person and ask to verify. But things like that, the verification of who you are, but being consistent. What is your brand? So your point of entry, website, your presence on Instagram, Facebook, and networking. Yeah.
Excellent.
I agree 1,000,000% with everything, that Mr. Damian said, because I think, for myself as a rising R&B artist in popular music, you find social media, that is our life force, for almost anyone in the industry, especially now. It's our life force. It's where you're communicating, you're engaging and interacting. And one thing that I love which you know personally about me, Aisha, is networking. It's like that is so key to what we do, relationships. I'm sure that all of us have been beneficiaries of, you met a person, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and in the fifth year, this, you know, connection may lead to this open door, this tour, or this gig. And I think that that's something, particularly with our AMP students, that I always try to reiterate. It's like you have to build these relationships, soak in the experience, and just be conscious and mindful that in our craft, oftentimes the seeds that you sow now, they may not manifest for a few months, a few years, you know, who knows? And I think that I love the way that you plainly put it, your point of entry. How are people connecting you? I remember, for example, before I even really began to grasp what it meant to have like a brand or you know, a presence, I remember when I was a freshman at Morehouse, my goals from being a kid from Charlotte, North Carolina, I was like, Mom, I want to go down here, make an impact in Morehouse. I got this scholarship. I want to sing. And literally before I knew it, people were like, oh, that guy with the afro, like he's a singer. Like he's always singing. He's here, there, and everywhere. You know what I mean? And it became, well, when you see Ken, I know he's probably about to sing something. You know what I mean? And then I began to educate myself in a more detailed format of expounding on that. But if you're a singer, people should know that. If you're a musician, you have to find a way to allow that message to be consistent, because that is so key.
Wow, thank you. Um, Before I go on to questions from the audience, let me ask this really quickly. Fire round. Say someone comes on. We have a this is a question from the audience. I'm 13, and everyone says I'm a great singer. I really hope that I can, you know, be a famous singer one day. What do I need to do right now in order to stay on the path and try to make that happen?
Find a good voice teacher. Find somebody you trust. I was lucky when I was young. I had a voice teacher, and he was my teacher from 9 years old, 8 years old until I graduated high school. And he didn't hurt my voice. You know, I think you have to have people that you trust. You have to surround yourself with them. I mean, even at this point in my career, I still need people I trust and people I can talk to. So I think first step, when you're a young singer, you need to find somebody that you can sing for and will give you sound technique and sound advice.
Excellent.
I agree with that, and I think it's important as you're building that network of people that you trust, that you there's somebody in the opera business who always would talk about like having a board of directors. You know, you're the CEO of your company, but I think one of the really smart things about that is that you don't want it to be so many people. It's like we talked a little about before. There's going to be, everybody has opinions and everybody has advice that they're willing to give. Most of the time it's well-intentioned. But if you're taking everything from everybody who offers something and trying to run with that, you become windblown, like from, you know, so it goes again back to really creating a practice that you can check in with yourself with, does it align with what you're trying to do as an artist, with what you know to be true about your voice? So finding, as Ed was saying, those people, one of which is a voice teacher, absolutely, that you trust, because we do need feedback, and making sure that their values align with your values, and that it doesn't become so expansive a group that there are just too many conflicting opinions going into the mix.
One quick thing I want to say about that, this is great. One thing I experienced from a lot of my mentees, just because someone is your mentor and you follow them, that does not mean that your path has to be the exact same path. And that's one thing where a lot of young people, you know, elementary, middle school, high school, college, and on, young, if you're 60 years old, you can look up to somebody, and just because they've you know, responded and they're mentoring you, it does not mean that you have to go to the same school they went to. You have to have the same experience. You have to have won the same prize, the same age. That doesn't work like that. So even as you find these, I love that board of directors. I love that, Marcus. You have to make sure that your path is your individual path.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Ed, you want to add anything?
Oh, sorry. It just occurred to me that more antiquated board of directors, I think it's more like a think tank. It's not, you know, because it's the people that you go to that you trust to kind of generate energy around these artistic choices. But yeah, but it's not people giving you directives or saying, well, this is the way you do it, and then you have to subscribe to their way of doing things. I love that. Yeah.
That's beautiful, and that's so important that young people start nourishing that skill now. The idea of knowing how to find people that you trust, not in just in a voice teacher, but in the circle of friends. You know, knowing how to determine who is worth my time and who is worth me sharing my visions and my goals and my dreams with, and who will give me honest feedback and support me when things are high and when things are low. It's never too early to start that process. We actually have a few of our young musicians who have some comments, some questions for you guys, and I'm bringing one on now. She's going to introduce herself and ask you a question now.
Hi, my name is Amira Denizard, and I have a question. I wanted to ask, like, how do you accept failure? Like, what do you do to motivate yourself, to get yourself back up when you hear bad comments, and just stuff like that? So, yes.
Great.
Well, I think there's no such thing as failure. Once you set your foot to the path and run the race, there's no such thing as failure. I always got bad comments. The bad comments were the best because they let me know what to work on. I extremely made sure I was polished in that area, or it gave me confidence. Failure is when you don't respond back positively. You don't get back up. So, and you're going to get a lot of competitions you won't win. A lot of people will say, I don't like your sound. You don't sound like this. You have to make sure, sometimes your opportune moment or time, your set time may be 20 years later, maybe next month. And also in a career, you have lots of ups and downs. You may have a good year, then you have a year where you're doing nothing. You may have a good week. Same thing in school. You may be selected for the opera ensemble or for the choir, and then you may not. So there's no real thing of failure. It's just going with the ups and downs and learning how to fly and go against the wind and soar.
Fly, Amira. Love it. Anybody else?
That was so amazingly stated, because I feel the same way. I feel like, for me, I always look at it as, with anything in life, the lows come before the highs, and you just have to embrace the journey, and ultimately, I always find that I remind myself why I started. I'm sure in this whole COVID-19, all of us as musicians specifically have really been kind of halted, and there have been some bleak moments, but you have to remind yourself why you started, and that it's a journey, not a destination. So enjoy it, embrace it, and keep going.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and let me just say, as a manager in that capacity, who works with people who get the audition, don't get the audition, get the part, something we'll think that was going to happen and then it doesn't come through. To piggyback on Damian's point, I think the only thing that we can control, if anything is controllable, is our perspective, is what we let things mean, right? We can't control the comments we get. We can't control whether somebody ultimately takes you for the part or for the school or for the recording contract. But you can control what you let it mean, and whether you see it as an opportunity to improve upon things or whether you let it be failure. And I love what Damian was saying, is that there is no failure. It's subjective. It's what you decide to, what power you give circumstances.
And that all comes with just believing in yourself and having confidence, and as my dad would say, having thick skin.
Yes.
It's all part of this process. After, like Damian, I love the way you put it. It was, failure is a state of mind, and I think it's, if you do feel down and you do feel hurt by things, you just have to find a way to pick yourself back up.
Yeah. And I just felt internally like our responses to that failure, to that criticism, your response is everything, like how you respond is huge, because you can either take it and allow it to, I would say, negatively impact you, or you could use it as, hey, I'm going to spring forward. So our responses, to everything is huge.
Thank you.
Just one additional thought is, I think also important to hold space for the both and, that you can be disappointed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have judgment about our judgment, and that just leads us further into a negative space. Like, you know, I can imagine people thinking, well, I shouldn't see this as failure, so I'm a failure because I see it as failure. You know, that there are things that are going to be disappointed in this career. You are going to get told no, and that you can have that reaction, and that's okay. You can be disappointed that you didn't get the part that you prepared for. But it's, you know, how long do you allow yourself to play that out before you start to do what we're all talking about, which is the perspective shift and what is the positive here? And like Damian said so beautifully, how can I, you know, soar in the face of this?
That's good stuff. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for that feedback. Thank you, Amira, for your question. That was a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
As we get ready to go to our next student, I have a question from the chat group from Irene. Can you give me 1 or 2 tips that you all do to motivate or prepare yourself before a big performance or audition, like day of routine type of stuff? Oh, no one wants to share their secrets.
Yeah, I make sure that I eat a good meal at least 3 hours before performing, and I usually like to get to the performance space or the hall in the morning when the crew is there, and go to my dressing room and just sit, eat there, relax, and just sort of get on the vibrations of the room and just totally be calm, have everything I need. I mean, I bring like groceries, I go grocery shopping, I bring extra clothes, just in case something happens. I bring extra hair products, and I have everything there in the room, and I just calm myself and just sit there for hours, you know, so I'm not rushing in at the last minute, because then too many things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I mean, it's I take a nap early in the day. I eat a big lunch because I don't like to eat before performances. Nice hot shower, warm up in the shower, head to the theater, warm up at the theater. You know, I that's my favorite part of the whole thing, is just the anticipation, that those nerves you get before. It's always always the best.
No over practicing the day of.
Don't leave your performance in the dressing room.
Yeah.
With that, next question. Okay, we have another young musician who is on now, and he has a question he's going to introduce himself and give you his question.
Hi, my name is Andrew Bodrick, and my question is, I am in need of a agent, and I was just wondering, like, how do I get one and maintain it, and also what do I need to be able to find to have that perfect fit with my agent?
Good question.
So to go back to some of the things that were brought up in previous questions, this is a business of relationships, much like the world is, you know, works by relationships. And so just making sure that you are in contact with people who, if you don't know agents personally, would be able to make introductions for you when you're ready for that is huge. As a manager in the opera world, you know, a well-placed email or phone call from somebody that I know and trust goes a huge way over, you know, somebody I just don't know or have any sort of personal connection to. And I think as you're building those relationships and starting to be in contact with those people, remembering that your manager is the person who is going to represent you on the business side in this industry. So you really want it to be a person who aligns with your values. You want it to be somebody that you're comfortable with them speaking on your behalf. And from the relationship standpoint, you want it to be somebody that you're very comfortable having conversations with. It's the person who very often may be bringing you the feedback from an audition or from companies, and the person who should be looking at long-term planning for you and how do we make decisions now that will serve you throughout your career, not just to get you, you know, famous for the minute and without consideration of what lies beyond that. So really making sure that it's somebody that you gel with personally, because it's the person that you're going to be spending a lot of time talking about your aspirations with and crafting plans for the future. You just want to be sure that you're comfortable with that person and that their vision aligns with yours.
Okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. And we're going to bring in the next one because we have several. Okay, this young lady will introduce herself and ask her question now.
Hi, my name is Zella Kirkpatrick, and I was just wondering, what would you say are the best ways or techniques to work on projection of your voice?
Support. Breath support is the number one. I mean, it's how we opera singers project our sound through the orchestra. I don't know. I think that's number one for projection for me. It's just about your breath support and how you maintain your breath and how you use your diaphragm.
Yeah.
And I would say definitely make sure you have a good coach or a teacher, depending on the genre or genres you're singing. There are different ways that you need to project your voice. And you can psychologically think about filling the room and going beyond that. But I know a lot of singers that damage their voice, or they have to unlearn things later because when their voices were still in cambiata or still changing, they were trying to have a large sound or comparing themselves to other people. Our instrument is everything. It's our nasal passages, our head, our chest, everything. And some voices are smaller. So if you, as you continue to mature vocally, like if you were singing opera, you'd learn this is a Brett voice and there's this type. So we have to be comfortable too, knowing when we should project. You know, depending on the genre, should we use a microphone? Is the music too loud? Do we need amplification? You know, just certain things. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot to say, but they can say that. But Edward Parks gave a great general statement, which is great support in your diaphragm. But I would definitely have a teacher because your voice is still changing, and I don't know exactly when you say projecting your voice, what genres plural you are talking about.
Tell them a little bit about what you do and what you aspire to do.
I really want to sing on Broadway. I love lots of musical theater, so I like to do upbeat versions of songs like that. And my teacher is actually Mr. Martin on here.
Any other feedback for Zella?
I definitely think, as we continue to work, Zella, it's a lot to do, starting with your breath support for sure, and that's something that, even I can tell, and I'm sure Miss Aisha can tell, you really have grown leaps and bounds. And a lot of time as an individual, we're just hard on ourselves, and it may not feel as though you've grown to the same degree that we may tell you. But I think that you are growing from working with you one-on-one. It's just a matter of continuing to build your breath support and allowing yourself to embrace the growth that you are having, because it is very challenging. I'm sure all of us can attest to, as musicians and singers, what Mr. Damian said is so true. Subconsciously, you can begin to digest all of these musicals and operas and Broadway, and you're holding yourself to the standard of, a Renee Fleming, and it's two totally different, fields or levels rather, you know what I mean? So you're on the right track.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Zella, for coming on today. I have a question for each of you all. And it's a question that, who has an answer to this, but I'll ask anyway. How has COVID-19 forced you to recreate the stage? And how are you recreating the stage in the midst of COVID-19 or recreating the practice room? I would just love to hear you all's thoughts on where you are with that now.
I think I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, it's a major life adjustment, being home all the time and having a little one, young family. It's tricky. And but I see a lot of singers posting a lot of different videos and making the best of their quarantine time. But I'm curious to see how this will play out for us musicians and people that make their living on the stage, you know, however long this takes. I mean, I know it's not, we might be out of quarantine, but I think it's going to get tricky the longer it goes with just how many people are allowed to be together.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
Yeah. I think we're still obviously early enough in this that we're figuring out what the landscape is going to look like and how performances will go forward in some sort of modified way. You know, one silver lining I will say, and I'm sure you guys have seen examples like this. I work with somebody in the LA Opera Young Artist Program, and they did, right when this started, they did a, you know, at home series where it was 2 singers and a pianist. And they had in the Facebook Live over 500 people tuned in live, which they never would have had in an audience for that same concert. And then by 48 hours later, I mean, something like it had 20,000 views. I mean, so there is this moment, and we'll see how we navigate balancing that with live performances when we're able to do that again. But that I think people are going to be much more invested in seeking out other ways of experiencing performances. And, you know, all of us who love this art form, of course, we don't want it to shift away from live performances. I don't think it will, because people want that visceral experience. But there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to get their voices and their performances out digitally, I think, now that didn't exist before this.
Thank you for that.
For me, I was just finishing up a tour with IMG right before this started. And I want to say to the young people here, it's important to pay attention to every summer program, every lecture, every master class, every class you have in school. Because the thing that's keeping me afloat also mentally during this, because I do a lot of work performing and teaching, but I'm glad that I also am teaching Ed School of Music because I'm able to interact with people and teach. But also I have a background in music technology, so now I'm able to use those skills. You know, like you were reading the biography of Edward Parks. You know, he does multiple things, so he's not a one-track minded person, even though he's focused in his career. Marcus Beam, you know, performer, same thing, not one-tracked, but he does multiple things. Same thing with Quillan. All of us have skills that we bring to the table. And it's moments like this where we're so-called shut down. We're not really shut down. We just have to look inside introspectively and harness the other gifts and talents that we have naturally. So it's important for the young people nowadays to be tech savvy, to know how to do more than just get on a stage and perform for people. Because this may happen again. It may not be a virus. It could be something else. You know, but it's important to make sure that everything that you receive, all that information, you're really processing it, and you don't brush anything off, because you never know. You know, nowadays, and we'll all say this sometimes to make it in music, you have to not necessarily be multi-genre, but you have to have multiple streams of income within music. So all of us are having to constantly reinvent ourselves to stay current, to stay relevant, but also in this moment, we have to evolve and reimagine.
Yeah. And I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Marcus and Mr. Damian. And, you know, for me, I was one of those artists that I think it was a couple weeks ago, you know, me and my team decided to do, hey, let's do a house concert, you know, and I had a friend that's a saxophonist come on and a guitarist, and I played keys, and, you know, we did some cover tunes and some originals. And it was really cool to see like how it was all of these people tuning in at one time and, you know, sharing it. And then I was just with technology, you know, Instagram, I was DMing my manager connected with, I can't think of the gentleman's name, but he's the music director of the Emmys. And he's doing this collaborative concert series with tons of musicians from all over, where it's kind of like you know, you splice the videos together, and he wants me, you know, to be featured in his next. And I think, as Mr. Marcus said, like that silver lining where it's like, because we're creatives and we love our craft, you're still finding ways to find joy and to share your gift through music. And as Mr. Damian said, it is so key to, what is the old saying? Like, not be a one-trick pony. It's like, you know, to tap into those other skills. And I think, I find it like being a millennial, as they just call us, it's like, everybody's like, oh, you're always on the phone. But it's even now, you're really seeing the strength and the power of an Instagram, you know, and it's a new Voicey app where people are having like a studio experience, and you know, it's just tons of things that you can tap into. And I think that critical times like this, it allows you to not only have the time, but it's going to push you to, wow, how can I be creative? How can I still stay consistent? For sure.
Well, we have about 30 seconds, so you can go ahead and add your last moment.
Oh, sure. I was going to say, I think another silver lining of this, like Damian was talking about the real multiple income streams, is that it also allows artists to find other creative outlets, right? So that you're not putting everything in one basket. Because just like Damian was saying, this might happen again, or you just might have a lull in a bad year, or a year when you're not performing. This allows you to find other outlets so that you're not, all of your creative energy isn't dependent on one manifestation, right? So that you can explore all of those and find joy in all of those.
Beautiful. Wow, this was incredible. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. You didn't just inspire, you know, the young people of the Atlanta Music Project or young singers watching from wherever they're watching, but you know, we have a lot of professionals on as well, as you can tell from some of the comments that have come in. And I think it's really beautiful, as you said, to be creative during this time and innovative and find new ways to find that joy that you first found in music and share it with others. And I think we did that today, at least for 1 hour. So maybe we'll do it again sometime. But to Marcus, Ed, Damian, and Quillan, you all are incredibly gifted, and we thank you for sharing your time and your talents with us and this wonderful information. I'm sure that it'll help many people. I wish you all a great day. For our attendees, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back next Wednesday with another topic, and I hope to see you all back here again. Thank you all so much. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.